Liam and Emma were 11 years old when they woke up in a hospital and learned that their parents had died trying to save them from a wildfire that had swept through the forest where they had been camping. The fire had consumed everything. The tent, the supplies, the photographs their mother always carried in her backpack. But what hurt most was not what the fire had taken. It was what came after. The social worker who visited them in the hospital was a tired woman in her 40s named Mrs. Patricia Owens. She spoke in a monotone voice, as if she had repeated the same speech hundreds of times before. She explained that without living relatives and without complete documentation proving their full identity, the twins would be placed under state care until a suitable foster family could be found. Emma, lying in the hospital bed with bandages covering burns on her arms, asked the only question that mattered to her. "Can we stay together?" Mrs. Owens hesitated before answering. "We will do everything possible, but the system is overwhelmed. Sometimes siblings have to be temporarily separated until we find a family that can take both of you." Liam, sitting in the chair beside his sister's bed, felt something break inside him. He reached out and took Emma's hand, squeezing it tightly. "We stay together," he whispered. "No matter what." But the system had other plans. 3 days later, the twins were discharged from the hospital and transferred to different group homes. Emma was sent to Riverside Children's Home, a large facility on the outskirts of Portland that housed 43 children in overcrowded dormitories. Liam was placed in Oakwood Boys Shelter, a smaller institution an hour away that specialized in older male minors. The separation was brutal. Emma spent the first week crying every night, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit that somehow had survived the fire. The other girls in her dormitory whispered about her, some with sympathy, others with the cruelty that only children who have themselves been hurt can display. The supervisors were overworked and detached, going through the motions of care without genuine connection. Liam fared no better. Oakwood was run with military precision by Mr. Vincent Harrow, a former corrections officer who believed discipline and routine were the only things that kept troubled boys from becoming criminals. Liam was not troubled, but grief looks like defiance to those who do not understand it. When he refused to participate in group activities or stared silently out windows during study time, Mr. Harrow interpreted it as disrespect. The punishment was additional chores and loss of phone privileges, which meant Liam could not even call his sister. Both institutions had strict policies about sibling contact. Visits were allowed only once a month, supervised, and had to be requested weeks in advance. Letters were permitted but often delayed or lost in bureaucratic shuffles. For two children who had shared a womb, shared a room, shared every significant moment of their short lives, the separation felt like dying slowly. Emma wrote letters every single day. She wrote about the dreams she had where she and Liam were back in the forest with their parents, safe and whole. She wrote about memories from before the fire, small moments that seemed insignificant then but now felt precious beyond measure. She wrote about her plan to run away and find him. Most of her letters never reached Liam. The staff at Riverside reviewed all outgoing mail and deemed many of Emma's letters too emotionally distressing to send. They believed they were protecting the children from unhealthy attachment. They did not understand they were severing a lifeline. Liam received only 3 of Emma's letters in 4 months. But those 3 letters changed everything. In the third letter, Emma had written something in code, a language only the twins understood, developed during long summer nights when they invented secret worlds to escape into. The message was clear. "I am leaving on the next full moon. Meet me where the old road meets the forest trail. The place Dad showed us. Do not forget me." Liam would never forget her. And he would not let her run alone. The night of the full moon, Emma waited until the overnight supervisor, Mrs. Chen, finished her rounds at midnight. Mrs. Chen was kind but exhausted, working double shifts to support her own family, and her rounds had become predictable. Emma had studied them for weeks. She knew Mrs. Chen would check the dormitory at midnight, then retreat to her office to complete paperwork until the 6 a.m. shift change. Emma had packed a small backpack over several days, hiding items she had gathered or stolen. A flashlight, matches, a bottle of water, 3 granola bars, an extra sweater, the stuffed rabbit, and the most important thing, a folded map she had torn from an atlas in the facility library, showing the forests north of Portland where her family had camped every summer before the fire. She climbed out through the bathroom window on the 2nd floor, the same window she had noticed did not lock properly. She had tested it 3 times in previous nights, opening it just enough to confirm it was possible. Now she opened it fully and squeezed through, hanging from the ledge before dropping onto the overgrown bushes below. The fall knocked the wind from her lungs, but she did not cry out. She got up, brushed herself off and ran into the darkness. Liam's escape was more complicated. Oakwood had better security and fewer blind spots. The windows had bars. The doors had alarms. Mr. Harrow prided himself on never having lost a resident. But what Oakwood had in security, it lacked in maintenance budget. Liam had discovered that the bars on the basement window near the laundry room were rusted through at the bolts. He had spent weeks carefully loosening them with a screwdriver he had taken from the maintenance closet. On the night of the full moon, Liam volunteered for laundry duty, something he had never done before. The night supervisor, a young man named Derek who spent most of his shifts watching videos on his phone, barely looked up when Liam said he could not sleep and wanted to be useful. Derek waved him toward the basement, grateful for one less thing to worry about. In the basement, Liam worked quickly. He removed the loosened bars, squeezed through the narrow window, and found himself in the delivery alley behind the building. His heart pounded so loudly he was certain someone would hear it and come running. But no one came. He walked calmly to the street, then started running the moment he was out of sight. The meeting place was 12 miles away. Both twins walked through the night, guided by moonlight and memory and the absolute certainty that the other would be there. When Emma finally saw Liam emerge from the darkness of the forest trail, she ran to him and threw her arms around him so tightly he could barely breathe. They stood like that for a long time, two small figures clinging to each other in the middle of nowhere, crying silently. "We are never separating again," Emma whispered. "Never." Liam nodded against her shoulder. "Never." They walked deeper into the forest as dawn approached, staying off the main trails where search parties would eventually look for them. They knew they had perhaps 12 hours before their absences were noticed and authorities were alerted. By then, they needed to be far enough into the wilderness that finding them would be nearly impossible. Emma pulled out the map she had taken from the library. "Do you remember the place Dad took us? The secret place?" Liam studied the map in the growing light. "The cabin." Emma nodded. "He said it was hidden. That almost no one knew about it. If we can find it, maybe we can stay there until we figure out what to do. Do you remember how to get there?" Emma closed her eyes, trying to summon the memory. It was 2 summers before the fire. Their father had taken them on what he called a special adventure, hiking deeper into the forest than they had ever gone before. He had shown them a cabin, old and weathered, surrounded by thick trees. He said it belonged to a friend who no longer used it. He said if they were ever lost in the forest, they should try to find it. It would be safe. At the time, it had seemed like one of Dad's games, the treasure hunts and secret missions he invented to make camping more exciting. Now Emma wondered if he had been trying to tell them something more important. "I remember the big rocks shaped like a turtle," Emma said. "And the stream that splits into 2 directions. We followed the left fork." Liam nodded slowly. "And there was a tree that had been struck by lightning. It was completely black but still alive." They walked for hours, using fragments of memory as their map. The forest was vast and easy to get lost in, but both twins had inherited their father's sense of direction and their mother's attention to detail. When they found the turtle rocks just before noon, they knew they were on the right path. The stream came next, cold and clear, splitting around a moss-covered stone. They followed the left fork just as their father had shown them years ago. The sound of running water masked their footsteps and calmed their racing hearts. By late afternoon, exhausted and hungry, they found the lightning-struck tree. It stood like a black skeleton against the green forest, its branches reaching toward the sky in twisted agony. But just as Liam had remembered, it was still alive. Green shoots grew from its base, stubborn and resilient. "The cabin has to be close," Emma whispered. They moved carefully through the underbrush, looking for any sign of a structure. The forest here was thick and untamed, as if no human had walked through it in years. Twice they thought they saw something and found only more trees. The sun was beginning to set, and fear crept into their chests. If they did not find shelter before dark, the forest would become dangerous in ways they were not prepared for. It was Liam who finally saw it. "There," he said, pointing through a gap in the trees. At first, Emma could not see what he was pointing at. Then her eyes adjusted, and she realized the dark shape partially hidden by overgrown vines and fallen branches was not a natural formation. It was a structure. The cabin. They approached slowly, almost afraid that getting too close would make it disappear like a mirage. But it was real. The cabin was small, maybe 20 feet by 15 feet, built from rough-hewn logs that had weathered to a dark gray. The roof sagged dangerously in the middle and several windows were broken. Vines had grown over most of the walls, and the front door hung crooked on rusted hinges. It looked like it had been abandoned for a very long time. Emma felt tears forming in her eyes, though she was not sure if they were from relief or disappointment. "It's still here," she whispered. Liam walked up to the door and pushed gently. It opened with a long, protesting creak, revealing darkness inside. He pulled out the flashlight Emma had packed and shined it through the doorway. The interior was in worse condition than the exterior. The wooden floor was rotted through in several places, and the furniture was broken and scattered. There was a stone fireplace against one wall, its chimney clogged with leaves and bird nests. A small table lay on its side, and chairs were reduced to piles of splintered wood. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust and decay. But in the corner, beneath a collapsed shelf, Liam's flashlight caught something that made both twins freeze. A wooden toy box, painted blue with white stars. Emma stepped carefully across the damaged floor and knelt beside the box. Her hands were shaking as she lifted the lid. Inside were toys they recognized immediately. A red truck Liam used to push around the campsite. A doll with yellow yarn hair that Emma had named Sunshine. A set of building blocks their father had carved from wood, each one marked with their initials. "These are ours," Emma whispered. "These are our toys." Liam knelt beside her, pulling items from the box one by one. "How are they here?" "We lost everything in the fire." Emma's mind raced. "We came here before the fire. Dad brought us here. These must be toys we left behind that summer." But as she looked around the cabin more carefully, she noticed other things. A shelf with children's books. A small jacket hanging from a nail on the wall, exactly Emma's size from years ago. A pair of boots by the door that would have fit Liam when he was 8. "We did not just visit here," Emma said slowly. "We lived here." Liam stood up, shining the flashlight around the cabin with new understanding. This was not a friend's cabin. This was our cabin. Our family's cabin. "But why?" Emma asked. "Why would we live in a hidden cabin in the middle of the forest?" Liam did not have an answer. But as he moved the flashlight beam across the walls, he noticed something else. Behind the overturned table, partially hidden by shadow, was a trunk covered with a tarp. He pulled the tarp away, revealing a heavy wooden chest with a metal latch. It was not locked. Inside were items that had been carefully preserved in sealed plastic bags. Clothing, documents, photographs, and at the bottom, a leather-bound journal. Emma carefully removed the journal and opened it to the first page. The handwriting was immediately familiar. It was their mother's. "If you are reading this," the first entry began, "then something has happened to your father and me. I pray you never need to find this place, but if you have, then you need to know the truth about why we lived the way we did, and why we may have had to run again." Emma looked at Liam, her eyes wide. Mom knew something bad might happen. Liam sat down beside her, and together they began to read their mother's journal by flashlight as darkness fell completely outside. The cabin, ruined and forgotten, held secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about their family and about themselves. The journal was not organized chronologically. It read more like a collection of urgent thoughts written whenever their mother found time, entries added sporadically over several years. But even in its fragmented form, a story began to emerge. "Your father and I met working for Cascadia Lumber Corporation," the first entry explained. "I was an environmental compliance officer. Your father was a field engineer. We were both good at our jobs, and we believed we were working for a company that balanced profit with responsibility. We were wrong." The next several pages detailed what their parents had discovered. Cascadia Lumber was not just harvesting trees according to regulations. They were engaged in systematic illegal logging in protected federal lands, using falsified permits and bribed officials to access old-growth forests that were supposed to be permanently preserved. The operation was worth hundreds of millions of dollars and involved people at the highest levels of state government. "Your father found the evidence first," their mother had written. Shipping manifests that did not match harvest reports. GPS coordinates that placed logging operations inside protected boundaries. Financial records showing payments to government inspectors who were supposed to be preventing exactly this kind of violation. He wanted to report it immediately. I convinced him we needed to gather more evidence first, enough that it could not be denied or buried. That was my mistake. We should have gone to the authorities the moment we knew. But I wanted to be thorough. I wanted to be sure. The next entry was dated 3 weeks later. "They know we know. Someone saw your father photographing restricted areas. Last night, a man in a suit visited our house and politely suggested that your father had misunderstood what he saw, and that it would be unfortunate if he damaged his career over a simple mistake. The man smiled when he said it, but his eyes promised something else. We made copies of everything. I sent documentation to 3 separate lawyers with instructions to open it if anything happens to us. Then we made a decision. We are leaving. Tonight. We are taking you and disappearing until we can figure out how to safely expose what we know. Emma's hands were shaking as she turned the pages. Mom and Dad were hiding us. Liam felt something cold settle in his stomach. They were protecting us from people who wanted to silence them. The journal continued. We found this cabin through a forestry contact your father trusted. It is not on any official maps. It was built by a conservation group in the 1970s for researchers studying wildlife migration patterns, then abandoned when funding ran out. No one remembers it exists. It is perfect for us. Remote enough to be safe. Close enough to civilization that we can still function. We enrolled you in a small school under different names. We told everyone we were a family who wanted to live off the grid, which is common enough in this area that no one questioned it. For 2 years we lived here. You were happy. You did not understand why we sometimes seemed anxious when strangers came near, or why we homeschooled you during certain months, or why we moved to a campsite in a different part of the forest whenever we felt watched. I'm writing this because I need you to understand. If something happens to us, it will not be an accident. And if you are reading this, then you are old enough to know the truth. The evidence we gathered is still hidden. The people we were afraid of are still powerful. And you may be in danger simply because you are our children. The entry ended there. The next page was dated almost a year later. We thought enough time had passed. We thought maybe they had forgotten about us, or decided we were not worth the trouble. We were wrong. Yesterday, 2 men in Cascadia lumber uniforms were asking questions in the town where we buy supplies. They had photographs of us. Old photographs from before we disappeared. They were offering money for information about our location. We are leaving the cabin tomorrow. We are going to take you camping deeper in the forest, away from here while we figure out our next move. I am hiding this journal and our evidence in the cabin because it is still the safest place I know. If we cannot come back for it, I need you to know it is here. Emma, Liam, if you are reading this, please know that everything we did was to protect you. We never wanted you to live this way, always looking over our shoulders, always afraid. We wanted you to have normal childhoods. We wanted you to be safe. I'm sorry we could not give you both. The truth matters. What Cascadia is doing to these forests will have consequences for generations. But your lives matter more. If exposing the truth puts you in danger, then let it stay hidden. I would rather this beautiful forest be destroyed than lose you. But if you are brave enough, if you are safe enough, then maybe you can finish what we started. The evidence is behind the loose stone in the fireplace. 3rd stone from the left, 2nd row from the bottom. Everything is there. Copies of documents. Photographs. Testimony we recorded from other employees who were too afraid to come forward. Enough to bring down everyone involved. Be careful. Trust no one connected to Cascadia. And know that your father and I loved you more than anything in this world. The journal ended there. Emma closed it and sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. The camping trip, she whispered. The one where the fire happened. They were running again. Liam's jaw was clenched so tightly it hurt. The fire was not an accident. Emma looked at him. You think someone said it? I think Mom and Dad died protecting us, and I think whoever killed them probably believed we died too. The twins sat in the ruined cabin as that truth settled over them like a weight. Their parents had not simply died in a tragic accident. They had been murdered. And the people responsible had no idea that 2 11-year-old children had survived with knowledge of evidence that could destroy them. We have to get the evidence, Emma said. We have to see what they died protecting. Liam stood up and walked to the fireplace. The stones were covered in soot and debris, but he found the one their mother had described. 3rd from the left, 2nd row from the bottom. He pulled, and the stone came loose easily as if it had been designed to be removed. Behind it was a metal box sealed in plastic. Inside the box were USB drives, a thick folder of documents, a camera with a full memory card, and a letter addressed simply, to the authorities who will listen. Emma took the letter and read it aloud by flashlight. It was a formal statement of everything their parents had witnessed, dated, signed, and notarized by a lawyer whose name neither twin recognized. It outlined the illegal logging operation in precise detail, named individuals at Cascadia and in government who were involved, and provided a map showing exactly where protected forests had been harvested. At the bottom, their mother had added one final handwritten line. We are afraid for our lives. If something happens to us, please protect our children. They are innocent in all of this. Liam felt rage building in his chest, something he had never experienced before. His parents had tried to do the right thing and they had been killed for it. And now he and Emma were alone, hunted, with evidence that powerful people would still kill to keep hidden. What do we do? Emma asked. Liam looked at his sister, at her tear-streaked face and determined eyes, and knew exactly what they were going to do. We finish what they started. But Emma shook her head. We are 11 years old, Liam. Who is going to believe us? Who is going to protect us? I do not know yet. But we cannot just throw this away. Mom and Dad died for this. We have to make it mean something. Emma wiped her eyes and looked around the cabin. First we survive. We fix this place enough to live in. We hide from the people looking for us. Then we figure out who we can trust. Liam nodded. One step at a time. They spent that first night sleeping in the cabin wrapped in old blankets they found in the trunk, the metal box of evidence placed carefully between them. Outside, the forest was alive with sounds. The hoot of owls. The rustle of animals moving through underbrush. The whisper of wind through ancient trees. Inside, two orphan children held each other and tried not to think about how alone they were in the world. But as Emma drifted into uneasy sleep, she felt something she had not felt in months. Purpose. They were not just running anymore. They were preparing for something. And somehow that made all the difference. The next morning, the twins woke to sunlight streaming through the broken windows and the overwhelming reality of their situation. They were fugitives living in a ruined cabin with no food, limited supplies, and winter approaching. But more than that, they were children sitting on evidence that could bring down powerful people who had already killed to protect their secrets. The first priority was survival. Emma took inventory of what they had. 2 flashlights. Half a bottle of water. 3 granola bars. The clothes they were wearing. The stuffed rabbit. And the backpack itself. It was pathetically little for 2 children planning to hide indefinitely in the wilderness. Liam explored the cabin more thoroughly in daylight. The structure was more damaged than he had realized. The roof had at least 3 major holes, which meant rain would pour directly inside. Several floorboards were completely rotted through, creating dangerous gaps that dropped into the crawl space beneath. The windows were all broken, inviting cold air and insects. The fireplace chimney was so clogged with debris that using it would likely fill the cabin with smoke. We cannot live here like this, Liam said. Not through winter. Then we fix it, Emma replied. A little bit each day. Dad taught us how to build things, remember? Their father had been an engineer, and he had spent countless hours teaching the twins basic construction and repair skills during their camping trips. He had shown them how to tie knots, how to build shelters from branches and tarps, how to identify good wood from rotted wood, how to make things sturdy and weatherproof. At the time it had seemed like fun games. Now those skills might keep them alive. They started with the immediate problems. Liam climbed onto the roof using a nearby tree, carefully testing each step to make sure the structure would support his weight. He cleared the chimney by reaching down from the top and pulling out years of accumulated nests, leaves, and debris. It was dirty, exhausting work, but by afternoon the chimney was clear. Emma worked inside, carefully testing each floorboard and marking the dangerous ones with rocks so they would not accidentally step through. She swept out years of accumulated dirt, dead leaves, and animal droppings using a makeshift broom made from pine branches tied together with her shoelaces. By evening they had made small but real progress. The cabin still looked like a ruin, but it was a slightly more livable ruin. They built a small fire in the fireplace using dry wood gathered from the forest floor, and for the first time the cabin felt almost warm. But they still had no food beyond the 3 granola bars. Tomorrow we find water and food, Liam said. We cannot stay here if we starve. Emma nodded. She remembered their father teaching them about edible plants during hikes, showing them how to identify berries that were safe to eat and warning them about poisonous lookalikes. She remembered learning how to catch fish in streams using improvised traps. The memories felt distant, like knowledge from another life, but they were there. Do you think anyone is looking for us? Emma asked quietly. Liam stared into the fire. The group homes, definitely. Maybe police. But we are in the middle of nowhere. As long as we stay hidden and do not give anyone a reason to search this far into the forest, we should be safe. What about the people who killed Mom and Dad? Liam's jaw tightened. They think we died in the fire. They have no reason to look for us. As far as they know, the problem is solved. Emma hugged her knees to her chest. Until we use the evidence. Liam turned to look at her. We are not using it yet. Not until we are ready. Not until we have a plan that keeps us safe. That night, they slept curled together near the fireplace, feeding the flames with small pieces of wood throughout the night to keep warm. The cabin was still full of gaps and broken windows, and cold air poured in constantly, but it was better than sleeping exposed in the forest. And then, on a gray morning in early November, they heard vehicles in the distance. Emma and Liam froze, listening. The sound was unmistakable. Multiple trucks moving slowly through the forest, clearly searching for something. The twins looked at each other with the same thought. Had they been found? They quickly grabbed the metal box with the original evidence and hid it in the underground cache. Then they ran into the forest, taking positions on a ridge where they could see the cabin without being seen themselves. 3 black SUVs emerged from the trees and stopped near the cabin. Men in suits climbed out and Emma's breath caught. She recognized the logo on the side of the vehicles. Cascadia Lumber Corporation. They found us, she whispered. But as they watched, something unexpected happened. The men did not approach the cabin with the aggression of attackers. They moved carefully, almost nervously, constantly looking around as if they themselves were being watched. One of them placed a large manila envelope on the cabin's doorstep, weighted down with a rock. Then they quickly returned to their vehicles and drove away. The twins waited a full hour before approaching the cabin. Liam carefully picked up the envelope, and together they opened it inside. Inside was a single letter typed on Cascadia corporate letterhead. To Sarah and Michael's children. We know you are alive. We know you are here. We know you have the evidence. You have put us in a difficult position. The investigation is closing in. Federal prosecutors have enough to bring charges. Your parents' evidence has been leaked. We cannot stop what is coming. But we can offer you something. Cascadia Lumber is prepared to establish a $10 million trust fund for each of you in exchange for your silence and your agreement not to testify. You will be set for life. You can disappear, start over, have everything you want. Or you can testify and spend years in legal battles, reliving your trauma, painting targets on your backs. Think carefully about which choice your parents would want you to make. We will return in 1 week for your answer. Emma read the letter twice, her hands shaking with rage. They are trying to buy us. Liam's face was hard. They are trying to scare us, making it sound like testifying will hurt us more than them. Will it? Emma asked quietly. Will we ever be safe if we go public? Liam did not have an answer. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. His parents had not died so their children could be bought off by the people who killed them. That night, Emma sent an email to the lawyer who had been helping them. Cascadia knows we are here. They offered us money to stay silent. We are not taking it. But we need protection before they decide money is not enough. The reply came within an hour. Stay hidden. Federal agents are being briefed now. Marshals will be sent to extract you and place you in protective custody. Do not approach anyone claiming to be from Cascadia. Hold your position. Help is coming. 3 days later, the twins woke to the sound of helicopters. For a terrifying moment, they thought Cascadia had sent people to silence them permanently. They grabbed the evidence and ran for the underground cache. But before they reached it, they heard voices calling through megaphones. Liam and Emma. We are U.S. Marshals. We are here to protect you. Your lawyer sent us. You are safe now. The twins hesitated, every instinct screaming not to trust anyone. But then they saw something that changed everything. A woman in a marshal's uniform stepped into the clearing holding a photograph. It was the picture of their family from the toy box, the one showing all 4 of them smiling together during happier times. Attorney Morrison said you would recognize this, the woman called out. He said your mother called you her miracles. He said your father always made you blueberry pancakes on Sunday mornings. He said if I told you those things, you would know I was really here to help. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. Only their parents would have known those details. Only someone who had truly been trusted by their mother and father would have that knowledge. Slowly, cautiously, the twins emerged from hiding. The marshals surrounded them immediately, not as captors but as protectors. They were placed in armored vehicles and driven to Portland, where they were taken to a secure federal facility. For the first time in months, they slept in real beds, ate hot meals, and were examined by doctors who treated their cuts, scratches, and malnutrition with gentle professionalism. Attorney Morrison visited them the next day. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes that reminded Emma of her father. He sat with them for hours, listening to their story, examining the evidence they had protected, and explaining what would happen next. You are the bravest children I have ever met, he said. Your parents would be so proud. What happens now? Liam asked. Morrison pulled out a folder. The federal government is charging 43 individuals connected to Cascadia's illegal operations. Executives, government officials, inspectors, and contractors. Your parents' evidence is the cornerstone of the case. But more than that, what you two did, surviving alone, protecting that evidence, refusing to be bought or intimidated, that is going to inspire people. That is going to make sure no one forgets why this matters. Do we have to testify? Emma asked. Morrison nodded. Eventually, yes. But you will be protected every step of the way. And you will not be alone. Other employees have come forward now that they know prosecution is really happening. Your parents were the first to try to expose this, but they will not be the last voices heard. Over the following months, the twins lived in a safe house under martial protection. They attended therapy sessions to process their trauma. They caught up on schooling with private tutors. They slowly adjusted to the idea that they might actually have a future. The trial was held the following spring. Liam and Emma both testified, telling their story calmly and clearly. They showed the jury photographs of the cabin where they had lived in hiding. They presented the evidence their parents had died to preserve. They explained how two 11-year-old children had survived alone in the wilderness because they believed the truth mattered. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning guilty verdicts on nearly every count. Cascadia Lumber Corporation was fined $200 million and permanently barred from operating in federal lands. 16 individuals received prison sentences ranging from 5 to 20 years. But more importantly, the case led to reforms in environmental oversight and whistleblower protections. Laws were passed in Oregon and Washington named after Sarah and Michael, requiring independent investigations of logging operations and protecting families who reported corporate crimes. As for Liam and Emma, they were placed with a foster family carefully selected by Attorney Morrison. The Colemans were a couple in their 40s who lived on a small farm outside Eugene. They had no biological children but had fostered dozens over the years. They understood trauma. They understood that healing was not linear. They understood that the twins needed stability and love without pressure or expectation. For the first time since their parents died, Liam and Emma began to feel like children again. On Emma's 12th birthday, the Colemans asked if they could adopt them formally. The twins looked at each other, having a silent conversation in the way that only twins can, then nodded together. "We would like that," Emma said. The adoption was finalized 6 months later. Liam and Emma became Liam and Emma Coleman, keeping their parents' memory alive in their hearts while building new lives with people who truly cared for them. But they never forgot the cabin. On the anniversary of their parents' death, the Colemans drove the twins back to the forest. The cabin was still there, hidden among the trees, but it looked different now. The repairs Liam and Emma had made still held. The roof was intact. The door hung straight. The windows were covered but secure. The government had offered to demolish it as part of the investigation, but the twins had refused. Instead, they worked with Attorney Morrison to have it preserved as a memorial site, accessible only to those who knew its location, a place where children who had survived impossible things could remember that they were stronger than they ever imagined. Emma stood in the clearing where she and Liam had first reunited after escaping the group homes. "Can we go inside?" The Colemans nodded, understanding that this was something the twins needed to do alone. Liam and Emma entered the cabin together, just as they had over a year earlier. But this time they were not frightened, starving, desperate children. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were proof that even when everything is taken from you, even when you are left with nothing, courage and love can rebuild what was lost. Emma knelt beside the toy box, now carefully preserved, and pulled out Sunshine, the doll with yellow yarn hair. She held it for a moment, then placed it gently back inside. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," she whispered. "We finished it. We kept our promise." Liam placed his hand on Emma's shoulder. "They would be proud of us." Emma nodded. "I think they would." They spent an hour in the cabin, remembering, grieving, and finally beginning to heal. When they emerged, the Colemans were waiting with a picnic prepared, ready to share a meal in the forest that had once been a place of terror but had become a place of transformation. As they ate, Emma looked at the cabin one last time. It stood solid and strong, no longer ruined, no longer forgotten. Just like her and Liam. They had been left with nothing. But they had restored more than a cabin. They had restored justice, truth, and their own futures. And in doing so, they had honored their parents in the most powerful way possible. Not by forgetting their sacrifice, but by living lives worthy of the love that had protected them until the very end.